The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Pat Scott. Hi, Pat.
Hello there.
And Father Andrew Kinstetter. Hi, Father Andrew.
Hello there.
Folks, before we get into things, I do want to start by mentioning our sponsor this week, which is Faith Life Careers. As a listener to Secrets of Tech, you might be a developer or someone who knows a developer, a programmer is the word that us lay people often use, looking for a new job, a new opportunity in a company that does some work that matters in the grand scheme of things. And Faith Life is a company that makes Logos Bible software, Verbum Catholic Scripture Study software, which both have gone to 9. I can't wait till they go to 11. That's all. That's the old Spinal Tap thing. But they've recently upgraded to version 9, which looks really cool. And they also make the integrated ministry platform, which is software for churches. And they're hiring full stack developers. And most of these positions are available to be worked remotely. And they offer, as they say, competitive salary and benefits. And it's a company where, as we've mentioned a few times in the recent weeks, the average tenure for the employees is 5 years, which is a long time in the software developer game these days. I know a few developers, and yeah, they do move around a lot. But people stay with Faith Life for a reason, and I think part of it is their values: honesty, openness, awesomeness, as they like to say. So to check out their open positions, go to faithlife.com/careers and tell them that you heard about it on the Secrets of Technology. Okay, so Apple has had yet another one of its events. It's had its third thing, as you might say, this fall, because we're still in fall. Apple had an event in September that gave us iPads and a new watch, or a couple new watches. In October, we had an event where we had new iPhones, of course, and then we just had this new event, which they called Apple's One More Thing, which was a nice tribute to Steve Jobs, and they're rolling out their new Apple Silicon Macs. And what does that mean? So they have their new CPUs. They're transitioning over the next couple of years from the Intel CPU, which they've been using for a long time, I think 20 years now. I think it's been almost 15 years at least. They're transitioning to their new in-house CPUs based on the ARM architecture. And we won't get into the technical details too much, except because we want to just talk about what does this mean for people like you and me? People just need computers to use. And what do these new computers do for us? Are these computers we might want to buy if we're in the market for Macs? So let's kind of get into that. They started by talking about how the Mac is in their DNA, and one of the interesting things of them reassuring us of this is a lot of people are concerned that with the rise of the iPhone and the iPad, that Apple is moving toward a touchscreen future where we're going to be expected to do all our work on iPhones and iPads in the walled gardens where you can only install software that comes off the App Store. Do you think that's something we need to be concerned about, at least in the short term? And B, what do you think of that future potentially?
I disagree. I don't think that that's going to happen. And I mean, I've drank the Kool-Aid, so I'm definitely an Apple fanboy, but I think that there are, for example, even in the parish office, we're using Microsoft Teams and we're on Windows-based machines. And I think I don't see, especially the Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Publisher, all of those sorts of things. In fact, Publisher I can't use on my Mac, which is quite disappointing.
Yes.
So like I suspect that there will be the competition around, and in fact, I think we need the competition to keep driving new innovations and everything. So I don't think we're going to see the end of Microsoft. I don't think we're going to see the end of the Android OS, and that I don't think Apple is going to quite take over in the Skynet sort of.
Yeah. Well, do you think the Mac is going to go away and be replaced by iOS devices or some combination?
No.
Yeah.
Again, no, because it's anything that needs substantial amount of work power.
Yeah.
I am not going to do on my phone. Right. I am not going to do on an iPad.
Yeah.
I need the bigger screen. I need the keyboard. I need the full mouse. I need
storage.
I just need I need more than what the phone and a tablet could provide. Although I think I can do a lot with my phone, but it is way less convenient, especially for bigger work related projects or even photo video editing projects.
Yeah, for me, it's especially with a tablet. You don't have a tablet or phone. You don't have that ability to have 5 or 6 things going at one time that you can quickly, pick something from here and pull it there. Yep. So big projects that you need lots of information coming in while you're creating a document or creating a product. That's not where the mobile devices are.
Yeah,
you need they're separate purposes.
I agree. I know people that they are dedicated to using their iPad like their primary workstation, and there are most people who spend their days writing words. But even then, like when I've tried to use my iPad or my phone for serious work, and I can get by, but it's 100 times harder. It just takes longer. It's not as easy, and it's not just because I've got 50 years invested in how to use a mouse and a keyboard. Not quite 50, but you know what I mean. I got a long time in it, but I'm not that old. But it's I think there are certain ways of doing certain kinds of work, and someday, maybe when my kids are my age, maybe there'll be a different kind of interface and different kinds of screens, and computing will look completely different. That's undoubtedly. I just don't think this is something I'm going to need to worry about in the near to medium term. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think mobile versus a workstation of some sort, even if the display is in the air with like Tom Cruise and Minority Report, I think you still have to have a separation between what things can be done one way versus the other.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And I think, and we're gonna get to this, but I think that doesn't mean that they aren't going to look similar. Big Sur looks more similar to iOS, even though it is still a fully desktop OS. So I think there'll be maybe some bridging between the two. In fact, there already is with handoff and with all sorts of other, you can copy and paste from your phone to your desktop. And I mean, there's kind of that workflow between the two, but I don't see them replacing one another either way.
So let's talk about the announcements they made. They announced the chip that they're going to be using. The M1 chip, they call it. It's essentially, what I've been hearing is, it's essentially the same chip that's in the iPad Pro, the current generation of iPad Pro, with some modifications, of course, for a desktop. But it's got that power. It's not just a CPU; it's a system on a chip. So it's got everything in one chip, which makes it more efficient and faster. And those are all the big words they kept wanting to use. Is it's low power and it's efficient, and that's important before the things that that they announced today that we saw in this announcement. So there's all kinds of technical stuff that they talked about, but I don't want to get too much into it unless there's something that jumps out at you guys. But let's just say it's a really impressive chip, and it's really been proven in the iPads and the iPhones so far. It's essentially the same with some modifications. They also showed us Big Sur, which we saw earlier this year at WWDC.
Mm-hmm.
We saw a lot of the similar things. They talked a lot about you'll be able to run universal apps, which is one app that can run, it's one download, and it will run on either Intel or the Silicon computers. So if you've got multiple computers and you get one that's Intel and one, doesn't matter. You only need to download once. And they'll have emulation, so you can run apps that aren't universal, like your older apps that aren't updated will still run even then. And in fact, they said some apps will run faster on the Silicon in emulation than natively. And pretty much, I don't know if they promised all, but pretty much most iPhone and iPad apps will run just download straight to the computer without much modification. In fact, it would be great if the developers did do some modification, because it's not going to be a touchscreen. You're going to have to work with a trackpad and a keyboard. But nevertheless, that's a kind of exciting that you can now have one app that runs everywhere. I don't have to buy it multiple times. If I'm happy with the iOS or iPadOS app, I can run it on my Mac. So that,
yeah, I think they hedged it a little bit, saying that your favorite apps would run from the iPhone over on there, which made me think, but not necessarily some of the less popular ones will get converted.
Right. Not everything is going to work, basically, in a keyboard and mouse interface. And that's, a lot of games, for instance, are not going to work and that sort of thing. But yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, but that is real exciting. That's cool. Yeah.
So let's talk about the computers themselves that they introduced. So they basically gave us 2 MacBooks, 2 laptops, and 1 desktop. So the first one they showed us was the MacBook Air, and they told us it's going to be, there's lots of talk about it's this many times faster and this many hours of this. There's not a lot of specifics. One thing I noticed that they never gave us was megahertz or gigahertz or anything like that, which is interesting that they're trying to get away from the gigahertz wars, where we compare everything based on, this one is 6 gigahertz versus 5 gigahertz. Even though that's not really a metric you can compare against 2 different CPUs and that sort of stuff. They really want to apparently get away from that. But they told us that it's 3.5 times faster than the previous Intel-based Air. The SSDs are faster. There's no fan in it, which is interesting, which makes it silent and lighter.
Mm-hmm.
It means that it's running a lot cooler. And they promised that we could get up to 15 hours of wireless web browsing, which I think is not a bad metric, because it means it's like, okay, you're web browsing, which means you're hitting the Wi-Fi. So that's going to be a power draw, running those radios and stuff. So 15 hours, that's like twice what you can get now.
Mm-hmm.
That's all
and
day.
1.5 times what the iPad was, which was the best of the one so far.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's all day, right? I mean, you wake up in the morning and
Yep.
If you're gonna sleep, you're gonna sleep 8 hours. That's pretty much your whole day there. That's so that's impressive. They did talk about improving the webcam on both laptops, and lots of talk about the image processing and stuff. But they're still shipping a 720p camera in it, which is pretty low quality. Surprisingly, I don't understand why they're still shipping a low quality webcam in 2020. I don't get that. It has Touch ID, no touch bar, 13-inch display, and they kept the base price at $999. So what do you think of the MacBook Air? Just on its own there. And it's got two USB-C Thunderbolt ports.
Well, that sounds like a really good machine to me, especially for keeping the price the same, and that they've added one port from what the original MacBook had, so that you've got 2 ports, not just one, to try to connect everything through. So it sounds like an awfully good machine for somebody who's, I won't say a heavy processor, but a moderate processing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How about you, Father? What do you think of the Air on its own?
Yeah, I would agree, they did spend a bit of time even just talking about the amount of video conferencing that you could do. So they were, making sure that was they upgraded the camera, but it's still, like you said, in 720p. But they recognize that this machine could be used very, very clearly for Zoom calls and those sorts of things. So I think it's a beautiful machine. I'm not personally going to go get one, but
it's tempting.
Yeah, it is.
I liked at one point they showed just how quickly, and maybe that was part of I think it was part of the MacBook Air, but they showed how quickly it woke from sleep.
Yes,
which was darn near instantaneous. Which was like, I've got I've got a Windows 95 machine downstairs that like takes 5 minutes to boot. So, you know.
Right.
Oh, that's a fast one.
Yeah,
I've got 15-minute boots on some of my clients.
Yeah, wake it up and then go make a cup of coffee and read the day's paper. Yeah, he said it was basically like iPhone, iPad fast, like just as fast as it is to wake up your pad or your phone. That's pretty good. I like that idea. It's interesting. It has no touch bar. That's one of the differentiators.
Do you guys use the touch bar? I have a MacBook Pro with a touch bar, and I use it for the escape button and the volume buttons, but I would use them as buttons.
It only became useful when I started. I started using an app called Better Touch Tool, which is part of the SetApp subscription, so you have SetApp, and there's a third-party mod that you can get called Golden Chaos, and what that does is it makes the touch bar useful. It throws all kinds of interesting data, contextual information up there. When there's an upcoming meeting, it shows up in the touch bar, and when you're in different apps or doing different things, it throws up different controls. So it's useful, and it could be more useful if they did more with it, like this one developer figured out how to do. So,
okay,
it would not be the defining reason for me to get one of the laptops. The lack of it in the MacBook Air is not a negative from my point of view. Certainly, Touch ID though, I love Touch ID.
Yes.
It's just the difference between doing a Touch ID on the laptop and having to, even with the Apple Watch Wake I have on the iMac, is not as fast as Touch ID. It's so much better. Face ID would be even better, but I don't know how long it is before we get that.
And they made a point to mention that because that works with Apple Pay. So it connects that too. You can use your Touch ID for that, which is really good.
Right. The watch, Apple Pay through the watch works, but it can be slow and a little weird sometimes. Like sometimes it'll take forever. It's like on the screen on the web browser. And I'm like waiting for it to show up on my watch, and then something will go wrong, and then I'll have to initiate it again. Having it right there on the computer itself would be better. Yeah.
Yep.
I like that. So then, as I mentioned, they also had a MacBook Pro, same size, 13-inch display. This is 2.8 times faster than the previous MacBook Pro. The battery life, this one they said 17 hours compared to 15. 20 hours of video playback versus 18. If you're watching 20 hours of video, you need to do something else. Get out of the house. Find something else to do. Don't do that. They made a point of mentioning the built-in mics. It's a 3-mic array, studio quality. Again, if you're doing a lot of Zooming or FaceTiming, that's big. This one,
podcasting.
Well, if you're podcasting with me, I want you to get a better mic. I'll get you a better mic.
I understand.
Although if the mics are good enough, maybe we don't need to get better mics. This one also has 2 USB-C Thunderbolt 4 ports. It has a Touch ID and a touch bar. This one also maintains the original starting price of $12.99, or not the original, but the starting price of the Intel. So. This is an interesting question. So we've got these 2 laptops. Both have 2 USB 4 Thunderbolt 4 ports. They both have Wi-Fi 6, by the way, which is new to Macs. That was only available in the iPhones before, and I think in the iPads too. So that's new. That's an improvement to Wi-Fi. They both have the M1 processor, of course. The Air doesn't have a fan. The MacBook Pro does. That looks like to me, now you guys can tell me whether I'm off base or not. That looks like to me like we've decided that in the Pro, we want to push the CPU more, which will make it harder. So we're going to push it harder, make it harder, and get more out of it. And that's a differentiator. What do you think? Am I on track on that, do you think?
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah, that's a logical explanation on why there would be a fan and not in the Air.
Okay.
They expect you to do heavier work, have more things open, be doing more powerful things than the consumer who's using the Air.
Yeah, if you're sort of
stuff.
looking at the MacBook Air as kind of your generic consumer who's just watching videos and surfing the web, and the MacBook Pro is someone who's maybe doing some heavy duty video editing or
sound,
those kind of things that just use more processing power. And that would differentiate even the types of people that those 2 laptops are aimed at.
Right, right. And that's the thing. The other thing that is the difference is the amount of battery in the different computers. So what do you think? I mean, if someone comes to you and says, I'm looking to buy a new Mac, what do they get? Should they get one of the Silicon Macs? Should they go for an Intel Mac? If they get a Silicon Mac, and we'll talk about the desktop one in a second, but say they want a laptop, what would your advice be to someone? Should they go now? Should they order now? Do they need to wait till there's reviews? What do you think? What would be your advice?
I think if they're running a business off of it, I would suggest that they wait. If there's a consumer that they've already got a Mac laptop and they're wanting to get a new one, they'll have some fallback for that. So that I would say sure on that. If their machine broke and they have to get a brand new machine and they've got to depend upon it, then I might suggest they wait. But and go ahead and get an Intel one.
Okay.
But it's, Apple does a quality job, but most companies, when it's the first generation of something, I tell people, no, let somebody else have the arrows in the back.
Yeah.
But with Apple, it's like, oh gosh, this sounds so good. I really, if I got stuck in that situation, I'd go the new one.
Right. Future proofing.
If I have my at home senior citizens, I probably would say, well, for right now, why don't you go ahead and stick with the ones that we know what they're like.
Right. What do you think, Father?
I think if you've got the adventurous spirit sort of person who is happy to jump into something new, knowing that it may not be perfect and it may have issues, that's kind of where I fall in these. I would say go for it. Especially because at least with Apple's, if something were to go wrong, usually you've already got iCloud and you've already got everything saved anyway.
If you're keeping good backups.
Which
and
hopefully,
yeah.
But I would agree with Pat that if this is for something much more important than just, hey, this is kind of my new personal laptop, I maybe would hold off for them to work, because there will be issues, and that's just with any new product that happens. I don't think that there's going to be many, but I would say go for it. I'm the adventurous kind, so
For those business people, I would say maybe wait 6 months if you've already got a working machine. Right. Now, if your one dies, then we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the market now, if you need a new laptop, like you're like, okay, this one is just creaking along, I need something new. I'd say if you're a college student or you're just getting some for home, at college, sure, go for it. You're future proofing. These computers will be. I'd wait as long as you can, like a couple weeks till the reviews start coming in. I wouldn't order one today, but I'd certainly wait till the reviews start coming in and people start talking about it. If you can wait 3 months and you start seeing the refurbs come into the refurb store, that might be a way to go. You get a little cheaper one and stuff that's kind of gone out, been fixed if it's any glitches, and now it's even better than it was. It's been burned in a bit. That would be good. But and certainly if you need a computer that's not one of these three that they're releasing now, if you want a bigger screen than a 13-inch MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air, you're going to have to wait. You either wait or get an Intel, and the Intels are good. Mm-hmm. I have one. I have a 2020 one that I just bought in August, and I'm telling myself over and over again, this is good. I don't need a new one. So I'm excited for the future because these do look like some pretty awesome machines. I'm a little leery about the fact that just the 2 ports, but one of the things that the Thunderbolt 4, this is now the Thunderbolt 4 spec, does is it allows hubbing, which means you can connect specifically connect a hub to it better. You can get a hub now, certain kinds of hubs, but this is more internal to it, less expensive hubs, let's put it that way. And now you can hang a whole bunch of stuff off of it without having to buy a $250, $300 device. You get a less expensive hub. The other thing that's interesting about these is they max out the RAM, and all 3 of these new computers max at 16 gigs. The previous Intel ones went up to 64. So that's an interesting limitation. Now, most people are fine with 16. I'd say the vast majority of people, unless you're doing some specific video or sound or that sort of stuff. So It's interesting though. That may be a relic of the fact that these CPUs are coming out of the iPad Pros, which have less RAM, so the memory controllers are not built to address as much RAM. They're going to have to eventually ramp that up to if they're going to put this in a Mac Pro or an iMac Pro or even an iMac regular, they're going to need to ramp that up more to more RAM at some point.
I bet you in 6 months there'll be an announcement of, hey, now we have one with 32 or 64.
Right.
You know, I bet you.
And when they have the 16, perhaps when they get the 16-inch MacBook Pro, upgraded, that's when they'll do it. Yeah.
That's probably where it'll go. Yeah.
So, and then there was the third computer, which actually, to be honest, this is the one that's most exciting to me for the moment, and I need to rein my excitement in, the Mac Mini. So this one it's got the same M1 chip. They say it's 3 times faster than the most recent generation Mini, 15 times the machine language performance, so the neural AI sort of stuff. It also has the 2 USB-C Thunderbolt 4 ports. It has a HDMI port on it, and it starts at $699, which is $100 less than the current base model. I probably would go for the next one up, which is $1,000, like $1099, which has a bigger SSD and that sort of thing, and more RAM. But I wonder how this compares in performance to the current iMac, because the way they're talking about the performance in this M1 chip is would this outperform the iMac for that dollar? That amount of money.
Of course, you still have to add a screen and you have to add, keyboard and mouse, but that's an additional expense.
But you could add a decent monitor.
Oh, that's true. But the monitor is,
and you can get a monitor for not a lot of money, and you get a lot of computer here. What do you guys think of this?
Well, I've liked the Mini. It's just that it's always been underpowered. And but my brother has one of the older Minis, and he saw this come out, and he says, "I'm going for it as soon as I can order it." Because I think I saw something on the presentation that says that this was faster than I don't know what percentage of current desktops out there,
like 98% of
or 95% of Windows other desktops, and I'm thinking, wow,
yes. PC laptops for sale in 2020, or I think is what they said. Yeah, that is very impressive. And
it doesn't take up much space either.
Yes, well, that's a big thing. I mean, and I've got a 2017 iMac, which is nice. It's starting to feel a little slow when I'm editing some podcasts. And within the next year or so, it would be nice to be able to upgrade it so I can edit faster and have more shows come out. That's all it's all about, folks. I'm trying to provide you with more shows. And I'm looking at this Mac Mini. I'm going, if this thing is faster than my Mac, I mean, the Mac is a wonderful machine with a beautiful screen, but it's expensive. And this for $1,000, wow, that would be like $1,000 for the Max,
yeah.
At the version I would want to get. That's impressive. That to me is almost the most exciting thing they announced at the event.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, Dom. I've never been interested in a Mac Mini before.
Yeah,
and this definitely grabs my attention somewhat. I don't know if I'm willing to jump. I'd want to see, and somebody surely is going to do this at some point, but I'd love to see a side by side comparison of the current iMacs and the Mini,
right? Just
in terms of all of the speed and everything. Because I like you, I have an iMac, and for what I do, I wouldn't. I love it. It's great, but I wouldn't want to downgrade from what I have.
Right.
But yeah, for that price point, I mean, that's quite cheaper than my iMac.
Yes.
I can't believe they dropped the price to $100.
Yeah,
right.
That's almost like what the store giveaway things.
Yeah, loss leader.
Come on in.
It's a loss leader.
Yeah, loss leader. Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at, so I'm on the Apple site, and I just configured a 16 gig Mac Mini with a 256 gigabyte SSD, and the reason which
is what a lot of laptops do.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at it because what I do now is I'm already running my iMac off an external SSD because it had the Fusion drive, which was, I think, slowing things down. And I'm I'm like, oh, all I would have to do is just move that over to the new computer. That's $899. I'm like, oh man, that is within shooting range of things. I mean,
it's not quite pocket change, but it's close,
yeah,
right?
That is for a nonprofit organization. That is not a bad price range for us. And I think a lot of people are going to look at that and go, yes, I agree.
And it runs Big Sur, which means that it's going to run the iOS and all of those other things.
Yep.
So.
Something to keep in mind as you were pulling those specs up, I pulled up the specs on my iMac, and I'm running 8 gigabytes of RAM. So already the Mac Mini has double that. But perhaps maybe the biggest difference between the two would be storage. So like my iMac has a 2 terabyte drive,
right,
versus the Mac Mini, which you said 256.
Well, it starts at 256. You can configure it with 2 terabytes. That brings it up to $16.99.
Okay.
Which is iMac range.
Okay.
Well,
yeah,
that's with the 16 gigs of memory. So it starts.
Now, does it start at 8 gigs of memory and 16 is an option,
yes.
or is it okay? It's not starting at 16.
It starts
gigs.
at 8. You add 200. Add 8 gigs, another 8 gigs for $200. But actually, I would never put 2 terabytes of storage inside. I would do what I'm doing now, which is get the Samsung T7 SSD, that's the external, and plug it into the back off of a hub. And that even buying those separately is less expensive than because it's $800 to upgrade to the 2 terabyte internal. You can do that other thing for you save $300-400 just right there. I like this idea. I mean, I'm looking at this. This is a nice setup for a lot of people. Let's put it that way. I've already heard from friends who are developers who need good hardware to run things, who are saying, yeah, this is, I'm seriously looking at this. So this could be the Mac Mini's coming out party. Frankly, this would be very interesting. So we talked about, okay, if people are looking to buy a new Mac, should they buy now? And we said, it depends. What if the Mac that someone wants, like I want an iMac, or I want a MacBook Pro 16, or never mind Mac. If you are looking for a Mac Pro, you're in a whole different ball game. So I'm not even going to address that. But like someone who's like, their computer has not yet been updated to Silicon. What do you think? Should they compromise on what they're looking for? I think we kind of let the cat out of the bag with our discussion of the Mac Mini versus iMac. But what do you think? I mean, is it worth waiting? One thing I would point out is a lot of the software developers for the software that I use on a daily basis have been saying things like Big Sur is a big change to the operating system, almost as much as Catalina was. And unless you need to, you should wait 3 to 6 months before upgrading to Big Sur.
Especially if there's applications that aren't from Apple that you're depending on, and you don't know whether they've gone through all the hoops possible.
Right. And these new Macs will run Big Sur, so they're not going to run Catalina. So
are they going to ship with Big Sur, I wonder?
I think they do. I think that's
most of the times they do that. I didn't see what they said, but
yeah. So if somebody's going to, we haven't heard of any incompatibilities with Big Sur and the standard stuff.
Yeah, Office.
But if somebody had some unusual software, then I would say that's a reason not to go to the Big Sur and or Silicon Macs yet.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I've been running Big Sur on my MacBook Pro,
right,
and I haven't had any issues other than small little things. But I'm also running just the pretty standard apps and software.
If you're running Office or in browsers and that sort of stuff, you're probably fine. I'm running 6 weeks to Sunday, all kinds of weird stuff on my Macs, and it's not, I didn't upgrade to Catalina till this past spring, so I'm really leery of upgrading.
Cautious.
Yeah,
sure.
The audio stuff especially. So that's really specific to me. But the other stuff is, you got to really be careful with that. So I think that's the advice is, if these look like some great computers, I'd wait until the reviews start coming in, see what they have to say. And if you need a computer that's not mission critical, not the way that you make your living, you're not going to be completely dependent on it to make a living, I say go for it. and it's because you're future proofing, and that would be really cool.
Mhm.
So, it concur.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So I just wanted one last thing about this Apple event. I just wanted to kind of look at is what didn't get announced. Like I said, at the iPad event, they talked about watches in addition to the iPads. At the iPhone event, they talked about HomePod Mini in addition to the phones. A lot of people thought we would hear about AirTags, which is this new thing, a new device, a little gadget that you from Apple that would allow you to put the device on various things that like the Tile Mate system, and there's been some others like that out there, that you attach it a little disc somehow, whether by sticky or a ring or whatever, and then you use the Find My system to find it. And because of the U1 the U1 chip, is that what it's called? I think there's a chip in newer phones and iPads that's directional. So you could walk around your house and it would kind of direct you to where it is. Like right now with a lot of these things, it'll play a sound and you have to kind of, hopefully you have good directional hearing and you can find it that way. But this one will like say move forward 3 feet, 2 feet. It's a foot down under the couch, that sort of thing.
Oh, it can see your couch.
Well, with LiDAR, apparently all this LiDAR stuff, it might be be able to see the couch. So there was lots of talk about that being available this time, but it wasn't announced. So this was the last Apple event of the year. So unless they do it as a press release, which is unlikely, we won't see anything till next year if it comes out at all. So still rumored.
It'll come out with the upgraded MacBook Pro.
Well, that's the thing is we can look forward to is they said it's going to be a 2-year rollout. And so those others, the other ones.
Well, and Apple is kind of famously known for not announcing things until they get it right.
Tight-lipped.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they're just trying to fine-tune this to make it the best product they can. And
Yes.
often they're kind of considered late to the party, but then they just make it work right. And
Exactly.
And they blow everybody else away.
Right.
Well, and when they do pre-announce, they get smacked on the hand, like with the air power.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that's why we don't pre-announce things. So yeah. All right. So that's good. We'll wrap it up there. The fanboys, we're going to put our fanboy hats and foam fingers away, and we're going to go back to talking about some other stuff. Before we do, I do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Technology, including Tim C., Declan M., Adam R., James D., and Steve S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. All right, let's move to some headlines. We definitely have an Elon Musk theme going here a little bit, at least for a couple of our headlines. Our first one, this is interesting. I saw this headline, I thought, this is interesting. Elon Musk's SpaceX will make its own laws on Mars. Emperor Elon on Mars! So,
what kind of laws are we talking about?
I know, this is what kind of scary to think about. No, well, when you peel back the layers, what all this comes out of the terms of service, which nobody reads, for the new Starlink system. Now, if you remember, Starlink is a new satellite network being put up by SpaceX. It's a low Earth orbit internet provider system where thousands of these little satellites blanketing the Earth, and so you can get internet service everywhere from these satellites. It's the promise. We've talked about it before. Whether it's actually going to work or not, that's a whole nother discussion. But people were reading the terms of service. I'm not sure why, but apparently somebody reads these things, because I confess I don't. And they found this interesting little section where it said, the Starlink services provided to the Earth or Moon, I mean, these guys are thinking ahead, will be governed in accordance with the laws of the state of California. Beyond our planet and the Moon, it says, for services provided on Mars or in transit to Mars via Starship, that's their their new ship, or other colonization spacecraft, the parties recognize Mars as a free planet and that no Earth-based government has authority or sovereignty over Martian activities. Accordingly, disputes will be settled through self-governing principles established in good faith at the time of Martian settlement. Wow. So that's not even like you have to go to the court in Delaware to have arbitration. This is pretty interesting. What do you guys think of this? I mean, it's kind of amazing that they've thought this far ahead. What do you think?
And this isn't in a science fiction book.
Yeah. Well, I kind of like the fact that they're saying that a government on Earth cannot be the ruler there.
Yes.
In other words, that this will be almost like an independent nation.
I think it not even just almost. I think that's what they're setting up for, that Mars will be independent.
So they will probably have to come up with a constitution or whatever they want to call it. And, so I can see that, because there's always this question about, hey, we explored, therefore it's ours.
Right. I mean, there will be that's sort of what's happened with the moon, is all of the countries here on Earth, all the spacefaring countries, have signed a space treaty, which talked about we will not militarize space, and governing how the activities on the moon are governed, sort of like what we do with Antarctica. Antarctica is recognized as not belonging to any particular country, but yet the treaty governs what happens there, what laws concern it, and that sort of thing. And Musk is kind of sticking a stake in the ground and saying that's fine for the moon, but Mars is new territory. This is all new, and he's not exactly saying that the people who go there get to determine their self-government, but he's not exactly saying that SpaceX will determine it either. It's just sort of...
Yeah, the headline was a little bit misleading that way. It almost sounded like, well, even if you fly in there and put down, SpaceX is going to determine your laws. And that's not what I'm hearing as you read that.
Right. I think you could read it as the people who live there get to determine how they're governed, which... frankly, is in
self-governing.
It's accordance with our Declaration of Independence. Yeah. That's the idea. Apart whether they can or not or stuff, it sort of makes the idea of Martian colonization more than just science fiction. It makes it more real, which is interesting. Even more so than all the rhetoric by Elon Musk. It's funny when it shows up in a terms of service legal document in dry boilerplate lawyer talk. That's what makes it feel more real, which is kind of funny. Cool. I'm not going, but maybe my kids will go someday. So that would be.
I think they might need to ship a few priests out there, though.
We will definitely.
I was going to say, what does this do? This won't be the Diocese of Florida at this point, because governing.
They have jurisdiction on the moon, but
the Bishop of Orlando is the Bishop of the Moon.
That's what I remembered.
Mars is mission territory.
Yeah.
Bishop Kinstetter will be the first missionary bishop to Mars. That would be, yes. Well, you already live in Wyoming, so that's practically Mars already.
It's depends on the year. It's cold enough to be Mars, but
yes.
But that's not a topic for this podcast, but it brings up all the issues of communication back to Earth and all of that stuff, which I know that they would use the Starlink, satellites. I mean, that's all part of it eventually, but
wow.
There's all sorts of things that maybe we're just starting to think about, because this is kind of the first step in that direction.
Right. I think
one big step for humankind.
As we start heading out, this is something the church is going to need to think about. In fact, I would love to have, actually it is something that we could talk about sometime on this show, about what does it look like when we've got people living off planet, Catholics living off planet. How does the church serve them, and what are the theological and canonical implications of that? And it's not unprecedented. Frankly, back in the day when it took 2 months to travel across the Atlantic Ocean, that was not dissimilar. It's
essentially the same reality. Yeah. Just instead of crossing the ocean, you're crossing the vastness of empty space.
Right. Interesting. So, that's a topic for a future show, because I definitely want to talk about that. Well, let's move on to.
Can we nominate Bishop Kinstetter to do it?
I put his name forward when they go to Mars. Send them to Mars. That's not a bad. No, that's I don't want you to go to Mars. We couldn't do a podcast. But the
by then we're going to have instantaneous communication back and forth and transporters and
yes, we'll use subspace communication.
It'll be perfect.
Excellent. So our next headline also involves an Elon Musk company, but this is interesting. People are jailbreaking used Teslas to get the features they expect. Now, the point of this story is that when you buy a used Tesla, when you buy a new Tesla, you can get upgrade packages, including like the whole autopilot thing. Everyone's all excited. That's an optional upgrade. It costs $8,000, which is a lot. But Tesla says when you buy a used car, that package is sold to the original purchaser. When the car is resold, the license is null. They turn that off. And what's happening is that people who are buying used Teslas are jailbreaking the cars to get the software back. And now there's a dispute over whether this is legal or not. And this is an interesting question because it'd be like, in one sense, it's like Lexus saying, oh, you bought a used Lexus? Oh, you don't get anti-lock brakes. You just get regular brakes. We're turning that feature off. That seems weird. But on the other hand, it's software, right? What do you think? I mean, is a Tesla a car or a computer? Should software upgrades to cars be treated like purchase goods or licenses? What do you think?
Well, with a PC, if somebody sells a used PC, that software reverts back to the basic operating system. Yep. You're not supposed to hand on software that you've paid for on a computer, but you don't have to go in and take out the memory card or the extra graphics card you put in there. So what the hardware should stay the same. I can understand, additional software packages could fall under you license this software, and I could buy that, to say, you don't get that software unless it's a safety feature like the anti-lock brakes. I think that's more hardware. But, if it's a navigation system or if it's a self-driving feature that would be optional at the time you buy it, I don't think they should be jailbreaking that.
What do you think, Father?
I'm not entirely sure what to think. I mean, I guess I kind of go back and forth on which side I would prefer to be on, but you'd think that there would be a way for if you had a Tesla and you were going to sell it, that I don't know. It just seems to me like maybe you could loop in the license for that software, and and then sell it knowing that you're selling the license for that software with it and transferring of ownership. But this is also the whole issue of software service that, are you paying for the software and like, do you own it, or are you paying for the rights to use it? And then, of course, like with Tesla, they're sending updates to it. And so you're getting those updates as part of your lease agreement or your rental agreement with it, where you don't actually own it. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure where I fall on this, because I guess I was thinking of just music and like using Apple Music. And I had two soundtracks from a show that I like just disappear and couldn't find it. And I had like bought them on iTunes. So I had to go on eBay and find a couple CDs of the same soundtracks that I liked, and had to purchase the physical copy. So I own them now. But so it's that whole issue of, do you own the software or do you just kind of rent it? Right.
Well, it's the same question in a sense when we went from buying DVDs and Blu-rays to buying if I buy a movie on service. Apple TV. Yeah, I'm not actually buying that movie. They can take it away from me at any point under the license agreement, because I'm only licensing it from them, not buying it. Whereas if I've bought a DVD, I own that.
Whereas if I were to sell my used DVDs, I can sell those just fine. But if I'm selling my computer, the DVDs that I've purchased through iTunes do not transfer.
Right, the movies that are on there are in your account. That you retain ownership of the license, you retain the license, but it's tricky, and this is the part of the problem, and I think it's a problem for Tesla, because I think it lowers the value of this. If someone's paying an extra $8,000 to $20,000 for these upgrades and they can't transfer that on, that reduces the resale value of this vehicle. And part of a point of a vehicle is if when I want to get a new one, I got to sell this one, and it lowers the market value of the vehicle. And maybe that's bad for Tesla. I don't know. That's interesting.
Maybe they should come up with something like, if you've got a used one, you can relicense it for a reduced fee.
That's potentially...
That would be reasonable.
Yeah. Although, of course...
I mean, not what the original fee was, but say some 10% or something like that. I mean,
and I definitely... I wouldn't want to say, that... I think Tesla needs to keep the ownership of that software because of the updates that are going to be continually coming out. I would not want to buy a Tesla, and even if even if I was inclined to jailbreak it, but then have faulty software that was going to auto drive my car.
Right.
I want the updates from Tesla. So
I want the valid one, not the
right. Right. And so I guess we have to be okay with recognizing that when I'm buying this license, I'm not owning the software.
Right.
That I'm paying for the updates that are going to come in the future.
Yes.
And we have to be aware of that.
We have to go in. We have to start being aware because more and more things are being run by software and like this. This has only become more prevalent, not less. And we, as consumers, need to be on top of this. We need to be aware that what we're actually buying, what do we get for the money we're laying out? And we're not necessarily getting everything we think we're getting, even if you never go near a Tesla. Yeah.
This is the problem with not reading the terms and service.
Exactly. You might be governed by the laws on Mars when you're buying your Tesla. So, all right. And then our third headline is, Pat, you mentioned, you recommended this headline. This is something about if you've got an older Android phone, you might want to upgrade your browser, right? Or switch to a different browser?
Right, because a lot of the older Androids, you can't, they because of the software that's been added by the manufacturer and added by the people you're getting internet service or cell service from, a lot of these can't be upgraded to the latest version. They are stuck at those old versions. And so if there's security fixes and stuff like that, you don't get them. And it could be a phone that's 3 years old and it's got an old operating system, and you can use it for a phone, you can use the apps, but you can't get the latest security fixes. And this is a problem with Android. But that would be the Chrome browser that's built into it.
Okay.
So what they're saying is, though, you could go download Firefox and it's got all the security that Firefox puts into it, but your Chrome version is stuck with the security that came on that operating system. Like Safari is stuck to the version that ships or is maintained by Apple.
Oh, okay.
It's the same comparison.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like, so it says that about 1/3 of everyone using Android right now are using Android versions 7.1 or earlier. And starting in September of next year, 1/3 of everyone using Android right now, if they don't upgrade, might be unable to connect to any website that uses a security certificate from the company Let's Encrypt, which is a lot. Right. That's 1/3 of all websites use security certificates from them, which is, I know I do for several of my websites. So that would be bad. So there's all kinds of technical reasons why that is. But as you said, Firefox does its own thing separate from what the operating system does. The problem is that this is done at the operating system level, and they do it internally. So if you've got an older Android phone, you either want to upgrade before next September, or you're going to need to switch to Firefox. Excellent. All right, but that doesn't affect any of us here, right? Or it doesn't affect you?
Well, I have an Android that I carry around, and I use half the time, but I prefer my Apple.
Yeah. Right. And by next September, I'll be on an iPhone 13, I think. So we'll see.
Yay.
All right. I think that does it for our headlines. Let's move on to our picks of the week. Father Andrew, what is your pick this week?
So my pick of the week is I am abandoning the Apple boat here, and I'm heading off to Microsoft.
Oh no! Save your
The
iMac.
dark side.
So this was a big week for gamers in the world. It was the release of both, I think the PS5 releases tomorrow or today if you're listening to the podcast when we release it. But my pick is not the PS5 because I had a PS1 way back in the day, and a PS2, I think, as well. Anyways, that's not my pick. My pick is going to be the Xbox Series X, but also the Series S. They're kind of more or less equivalent, the newest Xbox console. And the name is confusing because it sounds like the Xbox One X. The naming is completely just bonkers. But either way, the newest Xbox is the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S. Unfortunately, there's quite a bit to invest in them. The Xbox Series X is $500 and the S is $300, so it's a lot cheaper. But there's a lot of just differences between the two. The X has a terabyte of solid state hard drive. The S has 512 gigabytes. The X has 12 teraflops of processing power, which I had to go look up what that was because it's another random number that doesn't mean a whole lot to me, but suffice it to say it's very, very fast. Whereas the S is only 4 teraflops. Things like the S does not have a CD drive, so you can't, plug in Blu-rays or have a physical CD of your games, whereas the Xbox Series X has a disc drive. So I did manage to pre-order the X and got it installed today, so it's up and running and pretty cool. And I pretty much use it. Me and my brother play Halo over Xbox Live every other week, and that's kind of one of our ways that we keep in touch and can kind of keep those keep the camaraderie between us as we're 4.5 hours away from each other. But definitely for the gamers out there, I think I would recommend the Xbox Series X. I've loved the Xbox Series since I got into it a number of years ago. Most important question. Can you play Star Wars Squadrons on it? Yes, you can. All right, I'm sold. It is completely backwards compatible. In fact, I probably have Squadrons downloading and installing later this evening. So nice. I'm obsessed with the inability to play that game because I wanted to fly X-Wing since I was Dom, 9. I have an Xbox One that I might be looking to sell. Oh, hey, that might be. Your kids might appreciate it at some point too. My wife would not, but it should be fine. She'd have to be fine with it. All right, that sounds very interesting. We'll talk. Okay, Pat, what is your pick this week? Well, I had several people that were concerned about getting a messaging system that was encrypted and not have to pay a lot of money. And because they were working with nonprofits, my brother is a lay chaplain for hospitals in Arizona, and that's where it came up because you've got patient names of people who you're going to see, and you may need to mention their condition, etc. So he and I played around with a bunch of them, and then one of my sons also needed a secure messaging system. So we played with several, and the one that kind of came up as the winner was Signal. Yep. Signal is free, which makes it really attractive, but it's also very easy to set up and use. The main limitation that it has is that you can install it on one phone, one of your physical devices. Yeah, one of your phones, and up to 5 total ever PCs, right, or Macs. So I don't know what happens if you're like I am and you're constantly having to move to another machine after you've had a problem with one or bought another one. So I don't know what happens at the end of my 5. Maybe it's like Apple's devices where you had to deregister all and then register them again. But that was the only worrisome thing I saw is that it was a maximum of 5 desktop devices. Interesting. But it's real easy because it works on Mac, PC, Android, and iOS. And I'm sure I could probably put on my iPad as well, because those, there's not that limit on that. You still may be limited to one phone. I've had a couple of products that you could only put it on one. Right. So I've installed Signal as well. And that's the thing is it's open source. The encryption is open source so that
people can audit it. Average people can pay attention, make sure that there aren't holes in it, that there are no back doors. This is
no malware.
No malware.
Yeah.
So this is used by people in places in the world where it's dangerous to communicate, and they're really risking their lives on it. So if you're just you need it for here in the U.S., you're probably yeah, it's good. Telegram is one people talk about, but I've heard things about Telegram that it may not be as secure against everyone for various reasons. But I have Signal myself, so I
can signal you then.
Yes.
Hey, the signal keeps going.
Yes. So speaking of security, my pick is also a free, actually a bunch of free apps. If you go to the website, it's objective-c.com. This is the website of a brilliant white hat hacker named Patrick Wardle, and he creates Mac security tools. He works for Malwarebytes. He works for one of the big companies. But,
oh, really?
Yeah, but he makes these free security tools that he makes that are available on his site, and they're kind of awesome. Like there's a bunch of them, and I don't use them all. I don't have a need for all of them, but I use a bunch of them. So I'll just name the ones I use. So one's called Lulu. It's a free open firewall for Macs that so it protects in and out and will alert you, hey, this software is trying to connect to this website. Do you want to allow it? So there are the Mac software that does this.
Little Snitch
does it. This is less intrusive than Little Snitch. After a while with Little Snitch, I kind of got just fatigued, and I would just automatically press the button, which it kind of completely defeats the purpose. If it overthinks it, does it to you. I use another piece of software called Knock Knock, which it looks at what software is persistently installed on your Mac. It's a way of seeing what's malware. It's a little more technical. You kind of know what you're doing a little bit with that one, but it looks into the guts of your Mac and says, this is what's in these places that are in not usual software places that are third party. I use another one called REI Key or Ray Key. That might be what it is. It scans for keyloggers, basically. A keylogger is software that records all your keystrokes, and they hope to pick up important information like passwords. There's another one called BlockBlock, which what was BlockBlocks? I forget I'm trying to remember now. It says monitors persistent locations and alerts when a persistent component. Oh, so basically it monitors for the installation of any software that goes really deep into your system. When that's installed, it says, hey, this software is trying to install this little bit of component deep inside your system. Is this okay? It protects against malware. If you're not installing software, or you don't think you're installing software, and this pops up, you're like, that's when you go, what's doing that? So that's what that does. And then another one I use is called ransomware, and this basically protects you against ransomware attacks. When it notices that software is encrypting files, it pops up and says, hey, this software is encrypting files. And it's very interesting. The software that encrypts things that you wouldn't realize that it would encrypt files, like Zoom encrypts certain files as it's working. And Steam does too. Now, that's necessarily nefarious. There's perfectly valid reasons for software to encrypt. But again, it tells you what's being encrypted, what's doing it, and do you want to allow it? And it will also tell you, is this a signed Apple developers, a valid one? And there's a whole bunch of others. I'm not going to go through all of them. Those are the ones I use. There's another one more actually, which I'm going to start using, which I just noticed he added, called Oversight, and it monitors your audio, your camera and your microphone to when they're being used in an undetected manner. Apple says that can't happen, but evidently Patrick Wardle is known as the guy who can crack any Mac in 10 minutes. And so he says it can. Okay. And so here's a tool to protect you. I love that about him. He's really smart, really knows how to get into Macs, and has decided to use his knowledge for good and create tools to help people against people like himself.
I would love to see whether he's done anything in the Windows world. He probably doesn't. It sounds like he's concentrated on the Mac,
Yeah.
but some of those things would be really nice for my,
Windows clients.
for my troubleshooting.
Yeah. These are some pretty awesome bits of software. So I'll have a link in the show notes, and he has a Patreon where you can support him as well. He also publishes like white papers on Mac malware and all this other stuff. So I mean, he's really a benefit to the Apple community, the Mac community. So definitely, I became a Patreon supporter for him because of that, because the software is so great. All right, I think that should do it for us. So if we'd love to hear your feedback on our discussion on the new Apple Macs, on any of our headlines or any of our picks of the week, you can give us feedback by going to sqpn.com/technology or the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or you can send an email to technology@sqpn.com. You can find links from our discussion and picks of the week on our show notes at sqpn.com. If you haven't yet done so, please subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or at the SQPN YouTube channel, where you should hit the bell to get notifications. Until next time, Father Andrew Kinstetter, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
You're absolutely welcome.
Pat Scott, thank you as well.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.